Orders of the day.
Ballot item number 26, private member's notice to motion number 29. Mrs. Elliott.
The member for Whitby, Oshawa.
Thank you very much. I move that, in the opinion of this House, a select committee should be established immediately to develop a comprehensive developmental services strategy for Ontarians, and that in developing its strategy and recommendations, the committee shall focus on the following issues: the urgent need for a comprehensive developmental services strategy to address the needs of children, youth, and adults in Ontario with an intellectual disability or who are duly diagnosed with an intellectual disability and a mental illness, and to coordinate the delivery of developmental programs and services across many provincial ministries, in addition to the Ministry of Community and Social Services, taking into consideration the following: the elementary and secondary school educational needs of children and youth, the educational and workplace needs of youth upon completion of secondary school, the need to provide social, recreational, and inclusionary opportunities for children, youth, and adults, the need for a range of available and affordable housing options for youth and adults, the respite and support needs of families, how government should most appropriately support these needs and provide these opportunities, that the committee shall have the authority to conduct hearings and undertake research and generally have such powers and duties as are required to develop recommendations on a comprehensive developmental services strategy to address the needs of children, youth, and adults in Ontario with an intellectual disability or who are duly diagnosed with an intellectual disability and a mental illness, and that the committee shall present an interim report to the House no later than October 31st, 2013, and a final report no later than April 30th, 2014.
Mrs. Elliott has moved private member's notice of motion number 29. Pursuant to Standing Order 98, the member has 12 minutes for her presentation. Member for Whitby, Oshawa.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. I really do appreciate the opportunity to speak to this resolution this afternoon. And as you will know, this is the second time I've introduced this resolution into the House, the first time being September 20th, 2012, when it was unanimously passed. Unfortunately, that ended with prorogation, and so I'm bringing it forward today. It's my sincere hope that it will be approved again unanimously, and I have received indications that it likely will, because the issues that the committee is addressing are serious and pressing. We have many guests in our galleries today, Mr. Speaker, as you can see, and I'm extremely grateful for the people who have provided support to me in bringing this resolution forward. People who are watching today in their homes, thank you for your support as well. And I know that you're counting on all of us to do the right things, that you need our help as legislators. You need us to develop a strategy for the some 100,000 to 200,000 people in Ontario who are living with an intellectual challenge or who are duly diagnosed with both an intellectual disability and a mental illness.
For the debate, the member for Parkdale High Park.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's a pleasure, it's a privilege to stand and to speak to this bill put forward by my friend in the Progressive Conservative Party from Whitby, Oshawa. We were on Evan Solomon's show, Power and Politics, in fact, when the tragic case of the Telford family broke into the news, speaking about the complete inadequacy of our system in dealing with folk who have to deal with members of their family that have severe disabilities. And truly, if there is one plea that goes out of this House this day, it is this: do something. Move forward in some way. I absolutely support the member's bill. We will be voting for it. There's no issue there. Although I have to say, you know, there was a select committee on mental health and addictions, which the member herself sat, and our health critics sat as well. And they came up with some 23, I think it was, recommendations. Let me tell you what that committee did. They were struck, the Select Committee on Mental Health and Addictions. They worked for 18 months, 30 days of hearings, 230 presenters, 300 submissions, and all party, remember, on this came up with a number of excellent recommendations upon which everyone agreed, and it now sits collecting dust on a shelf, except for 3 of those recommendations. So I guess what I'm saying is the caveat, I want to see this move forward, but if the government is not going to work on the recommendations that this committee comes up with, then it will be a great deal of time wasted, a great deal of money wasted for naught. So really I'm appealing to our Liberal government that if this is passed, and I hope that it will be, that when this committee is struck, and I hope that it will be, that the recommendations from such a committee will actually be put into effect. So on the record, just saying that. Let's talk about the background a little bit of where we are in this province on this file. Many people don't realize, who aren't dealing with this, that there was a huge upheaval in the last year. Special Services at Home, a program that used to provide service to children and adults, as of April 2012, only provides services to children. So hence, there's a massive wait list at the transition point. 8,500 children on the wait list versus the 13,000 receiving service. Currently, almost 14,000 adults with developmental disabilities are receiving care under the SSAH, with 300 on the wait list. Passport, very familiar with that, a program for adults that transfers funding directly to them or their families, currently serves around 4,000, but there are more than 4,500 families on the wait list. You would have to double the capacity just to eliminate the wait list. There are 2,700 people who have had the eligibility for developmental services confirmed, and an additional 2,500 who are currently being assessed for services. When we look at residential services, the numbers just get worse. Today, there are just 17,500 people served in 5 different forms of accommodation. Let's just sum it all up. Community Living says it best. They say, and I quote, nearly 23,000 people are languishing on waiting lists. Decades of chronic underfunding of the developmental services sector is placing in peril children and adults who have an intellectual disability, their families, and the agencies that support them. 23,000. That's black. That's sad. Those are real lives. Those are people like the Telfords, every single one of them.
Further debate? The Minister of Community and Social Services.
Thanks very much, Mr. Speaker. And I want to begin by thanking the honourable member opposite for her motion. You know, there are a few people in this legislative assembly for whom I have more respect than the member opposite, so thank you. What I'm particularly pleased about is the member opposite's history of doing good things. The Standing Committee on Mental Health was a great example of that. I think everyone would agree that initiative. And her inclination to point direction rather than fingers, I think, is helpful. You know, the developmental services sector has a long history over several governments, but I'm not going to go there today. I'm going to speak more to the high ground of where we can go. Every year, Mr. Speaker, more children with developmental disabilities become adults and look to the adult developmental services system for support. And more elderly parents caring for children at home are having increased difficulties coping. Now, I've been the Minister of Community and Social Services for 3 months, and it's been a roller coaster ride, I can tell you, particularly as we prepare for a budget and try to fight as best we can to get allocations for the folk that we're most concerned about. And I certainly understand, based on a number of conversations that I've been privileged to have with groups who, for which I would say there's a shared sense of purpose on some of these issues. I have, over the last 3 months, had a chance to meet with a couple of school boards, including my own Hamilton Wentworth Catholic District School Board, the ODSP Action Coalition, the Ontario Association of Residences Treating Youth, People First Ontario, a self-advocacy group run by and for people with developmental disabilities, Christian Horizons, the largest single provider of, in terms of numbers of services. RENA, one of the largest providers here in Toronto. I was visiting there just last week. Community Living Ontario, which is a province-wide federation of families who support the full participation and inclusion of people with developmental challenges. We also hosted the Community Living Day last week, and we're pleased to do so. Also with ODIN, the Ontario Disability Employment Network, and most recently, I think it was yesterday, the Family Alliance of Ontario, which are strong advocates for the expansion of direct funding. So many of these folk and many of the families that are facing significant pressures have been kind enough to be in touch with us. I said this morning that I think we need to work on this issue together, all members of this House, and I want to repeat that. In fact, let me really emphasize that because I want to speak to the values that I think underlie the need for this committee. I believe that all members of this House can and indeed should be united in understanding that caring for our most vulnerable members of society, which surely includes people with developmental disabilities, is more than just a sacred duty, though it is clearly that. It is also part of what we must do to build a society in which any one of us would want to live. And as legislators, our response to this issue is surely one of the criteria on which history will judge us. Simply put, we need better answers. And I think the member opposite has highlighted our need to be creative and entrepreneurial and innovative in this regard, and I agree with her. And so I believe it is truly, that this truly is an issue on which we can work together in the service of the people of Ontario. And I'm happy to provide my commitment to working constructively with you and all members, member opposite.
Further debate? The member for Haldimand Norfolk.
Well, thank you, Speaker. The Callahans are here today for this debate. Dave, Tim, Kim, I see Leo and Kathy, and of course Anna, who was mentioned during question period today. With this resolution from the member for Whitby, Christine Elliott, we do have an opportunity now to refocus, to set priorities, to wake up Ontario's social service system through approaches and programs laden with fresh, cost-effective ideas to address the complex problems we're hearing about today, and we can address these problems through flexibility and choice. There are many things that need to be done differently, and there's a great number of things that can be done better. Of course, they can be done more efficiently, but most importantly, they have to be done effectively. I continue to advocate that it's those on the front lines and clients themselves who should be continued to be invited to tell us what needs to be done before a committee, as proposed this afternoon, how our system can work smarter and more productively. To that end, I note Community Living Ontario's proposal for a person-centered plan for parents over 65 supporting developmentally disabled sons and daughters, and funding supports, again, when the parent is no longer able to provide care. So the vision remains an effective, affordable, accountable system that supports and invests in families and in their communities, where adults are as independent as they can be. Support is provided to people most in need, as we just heard. There's $10 billion in the social services budget. There's obviously the opportunity, the clear responsibility to better serve those who are disabled and those who are truly disadvantaged. That's the point of this motion as I see it, Speaker. More and more we're hearing stories of parents often in their 60s or 70s or 80s who are desperate for help for their loved ones. They're terrified about what will happen to their child when they are gone. They're concerned. There are no appropriate housing options available for children, little chance of employment, no opportunities to have a life like everyone else.